Hello, good afternoon. Munmun ma'am, are you here?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir. I'm
Good
here, sir.
afternoon, good afternoon. Arindam, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Harjit ma'am, have you joined? Okay. Shahid, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, noon to sir.
Harjit ma'am, have you joined? Okay, let's wait for a minute. Anil, good afternoon. Anil Kathait, good afternoon, Anil. So, Munmun ma'am, as soon as Harjit ma'am will join, and then you may start.
Okay, sir.
Okay, okay.
I will wait for some.
Let me call her. Let me call her.
Okay.
Harjit ma'am, are you here? Oh, Harjit ma'am will join within a second. Fine. হরজিত ম্যাম, আপনি এসেছেন? আর ইউ হিয়ার?
Not showing like, sir.
উনি বললেন জয়েন করছেন। সো
Okay,
আই থিঙ্ক
এখনো আসে। হ্যাঁ।
ওকে, জাস্ট লেট মি চেক।
Okay.
Yeah, she has joined. Good afternoon, Harjit ma'am. Am I audible?
You are audible. Dr. Kaur is likely to join in a couple of seconds.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, Harjit ma'am, good afternoon.
Hello, am I
Yes, yes,
audible?
yes, yes, yes. Okay, so Munmun ma'am, you must please start.
Okay,
Hello.
sir. Thank you, sir. Welcome, ma'am. Harjit ma'am, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I beg a pardon for the delay.
No issue, ma'am. The network is all around not very good. That is really it's no, totally okay, ma'am.
Okay.
And a very warm welcome to all my participants over here to this 3 days online capacity building program on the that today is the third day of this particular capacity building program on coastal disaster risk reduction and resilience jointly by NIDM and SAIARD. So first of all, I would like to request Arindam Racer, Director, Academic Affairs, SAIARD, for the brief introduction of the second day of this particular capacity building program. Over to you, Arindam, sir.
Thank you, Monman ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome all of you in the last day of capacity building program on coastal risk management through geospatial analysis. Yesterday, we were very fortunate that Major General Dr. V.K. Nayak, the former senior consultant in NDMA, Government of India, joined in this program. He delivered his lecture on disaster mitigation, conceptual issues, and practice. He focused to give an overview on the disaster mitigation. According to him, disaster management is just an integrated process of planning, organization, coordinating, implementing measures for expenditure. He showed several mitigation measures and he tried to emphasize on the community awareness and community needs. He also told about the structural and non-structural mitigation program. Our next speaker was the great river scientist Dr. Kollan Rudra. He gave lecture on the climate change and the changing coastline of Bengal. He focused over the three rivers like Ganga, Brahmaputra, and Meghna. He said that the lithological terrain of Bengal is highly effective in hydrological process. The total hydrological balance of Sundarban Delta is interrupting. He also showed the Bay of Bengal sea surface temperature is 8 times higher than the global temperature, which helps to affect the coastal area. He explained about the last three cyclone and their effectiveness and how mitigation measures can be taken. And yesterday, our last speaker was Mr. K. Avinay from IIT Roorkee, and he discussed on the coastal hazard evaluation, a review of current techniques and their application in multi-skill study. He illustrated about the importance of the coastal zone, the case studies of the different coastal hazard. For handling the coastal hazard, he emphasized the coastal hazard mapping. He also fixed the coastal hazard wheel system from coastal multi-hazard assessment. So without further any delay, I would request Mrs. Munmun ma'am to forward these sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, here in today's session, the next is the special lecture by Dr. H. Kaur from NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management, Government of India, and on the topic of coastal risk reduction and resilient. Let me tell you about Dr. Kaur is associated as junior consultant with Center of Coastal Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in GMR division of NIDM. Prior to NIDM, she was working in landslide risk management in Gangtok, Sikkim. Dr. Kaur has published more than 16 research publications in reputed international journals. She is recipient of number of awards, fellowships, and professional recognitions such as Young Scientist Award, Gold Medalist in her undergraduate and postgraduate studies. This is really inspiring to all our young fellow peoples over here. So I would like to request Dr. Kaur to start her special lecture for today's session, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and just give me a minute so that I can share my PPT.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I hope my PPT is visible to all.
Yes, ma'am, this is visible.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everybody, dear panelists and dear participants. As moderator told that my presentation topic is on coastal disaster risk reduction and resilience. Here we are basically focused for the initiative taken by the government. So before entering to the main topic, I would like to spread the COVID appropriate behavior as its mandate and our duty to spread the COVID appropriate measures to the participant. So I would request participants to wear your mask properly. If you in a public place or in a area where more than 2 or 3 peoples are there, you can wash your hand with alcohol with water and soap. If water is not available, then please use alcohol based sanitizer and avoid touching of sensitive organ like eyes, nose and mouth, and please maintain the physical distance. So from here, this is the data that I have taken from the EMDAT website. So from here, you can easily see that uh, among from 1980 to 1999, the reported disaster are 4,000, and then from 2000 to up to 2019, the reported disaster are approx 7,000, which indicates that the frequency of occurrences of disaster is increased from the previous. So this will show from this data. Then again, I have taken this 20-year data from the EMDAT, which represent that 20,000 natural and technological disaster from 90s to the present day. In total, as seen in this figure, disaster claimed approximately uh, 1.23. Here you can see million lives. Additionally, disaster led to the approximately US dollar 2.97 trillion in economic losses worldwide, and these numbers represent a sharp increase of the number of recorded disaster events by comparison with the previous data. And this image clearly show that which it gives a evidence that in the world where the global average temperature is 1.1 degree Celsius in 2019 and above the pre-industrial period, the impact are being felt in the increased frequency of extreme weather events, which includes heat waves, then flood, drought, winter storms, hurricane, wildfires. So these are the most common type of disaster, accounting for 44% of the total event. Here in this image, you can easily see that. Then from number of disaster reported in worldwide. So in the 20 years, this period between the 2000 to 19, this report is taken from the EMDAT website, which shows that approximately 7,000 disaster events were recorded, and Asia suffered the highest number of disaster events, as you can see in this image. And the high frequency and impact of disaster in Asia is largely due to size of the continent, you can see, and landscape that represent the high risk of natural hazards, such as the river basins, the flood plains, and the seismic fault lines lies in this area. And additionally, there are high population densities in many this disaster prone area. Then from here, what I want to show you that from these data, you can easily see the disaster disproportionality affect those with the lowest socioeconomic status, including those suffering from the poverty as well as minorities and discriminated groups. So from here, you can easily see that the women's and children's are highly vulnerable as compared to men. So here you can see the vulnerability of our country. So in this image, you can see mostly in hilly terrain. Then we have mountain area, we have the Ganga basin, we have coastal area. So these are vulnerable, means these areas are vulnerable due to many natural hazards, like we are facing earthquake problem, landslides are there, cyclones are there, tsunamis, drought. So these by these kind of natural hazards, we are facing problem in our country. Then as we are focused for the coastal states, so this is the image for the map from our coastal area. So basically we can see mostly these belt facing the problem of cyclone, tsunami, flood, secondary disaster in, you can say, the landslide also they are facing in this region. So drought are also in, like in Maharashtra, Karnataka, some part of these areas they are also facing drought, even in Gujarat. Then this is the global scenario how this the coastal belt are facing a problem. Basically, we know that mostly the highly populated this coastal belt are very much important, as in perspective of economy also it will create the economy. Even you can take an mostly highly populated cities are Mumbai, Kolkata. So these are the coastal belt cities in our country. So from their report, what I have observed ki these cities, even in India, Mumbai, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Chennai, these are facing a disaster problem in in our country. And mostly these are, they have port facilities because they are generating the economy for our country. So we should give more attention to these areas. Now, these are some pictures of natural hazard which affected our coastal belt. So these are a picture of a cyclone, tsunami, then drought, Gujarat floods. So these are some glimpses of natural hazards from the coastal belt area. Now, hazard vulnerability and risk assessment. Hope from your first day presentation and during this 10 your first and second day, I hope you are able to understand how we can assess the hazard, vulnerability, and risk for our coastal belt. So, first thing for the assessment, I have mentioned we should go for the establishment of the baseline context for integrating decision making, which consists of four parts. So, these are define the boundaries of the project area. Here what I want to say, if we are facing basically focused for the coastal area, so we need to focus to identify the coastal like in the previous slide I have shown you the map of the coastal belt. Okay, so from these belt we should focus, if we are focusing to analyze the uh, has a multi hazard assessment for the coastal belt. So we need to first, we should define our study area, boundaries of our study area, that's we are focusing for the coastal hazard. Then after the identification of the boundaries of our study area, we should focus for the hazard identifications, like what type of hazard is impacting on our study area. Here, like we are talking about for the coastal belt, so we should list out what kind of disaster is occurred in coastal areas. Like in our country we are facing the coastal belt, mostly they are facing the cyclone, then flood, heat waves are there. Okay, then we can also consider the landslide hazard. So droughts are there. So like this way, we should identify the type of hazard in our study area. After the hazard identification, we should go for the hazard assessment, or you can prepare the hazard zonation map of your particular area. Then we focused for the vulnerability assessment. So here I'm not going to talk about the definition of vulnerability or whatever it is, but I just want to give you an idea about the vulnerability. When we are going for the vulnerability, we should focus for the element at risk. So element at risk are people and the infrastructure. So, what is at risk and who are at risk? We should identify these two things. Then we are able to assess the vulnerability for the particular area. And after getting the vulnerability, we should go for the risk assessment, as we know that the risk is the product of the hazard and vulnerability. So if you have the outcome of your hazard map and from the vulnerability, then you can easily go through a GIS environment, you can easily get the map of your risk assessment or risk map for your particular area. So this is the basically idea for your analysis if you are going for the multi-hazard assessment for your coastal belt. So let's talk about government initiative. As I think all we are from the coastal community from the West Bengal, so I think all the student community and researcher they heard about this coastal regulation zone. So the basic thing why government take this initiative to protect the ecological sensitive areas, like we have the coastal belt have the mangroves, coral reefs. So we should protect these ecologically sensitive plant because it act as shield against the natural hazard like tsunami and cyclone. Then this regulation provide to improvement of lives of the coastal community like the fishing community, mostly in the coastal area near the sea the fishermen colonies were there. So mostly due to the cyclone the fishermen colonies were affected due to this cyclone. They have go for the resilient infrastructure with respect to the climate change. Then this regulation gives the balance between the conservation and the coastal environment. So this is the main focus to come up this regulation to provide the importance and balance between the conservation of the coastal environment. So this is all about from the coastal zone regulation, which is developed by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Then second initiative for the coastal area, government come up with the project that is known as the National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Project, which is also known as NCRMP. So in this image, you can see the phase 1 and phase 2 of NCRMP. So phase 1 is also already completed and phase 2 is running. So under this project in an NCRMP project, this project is basically governed by the NDMA under the aegis of Ministry of Home Affairs. So this project in under this project they have identified the areas, states those are more vulnerable due to this cyclone and prepare the resilient infrastructure or come up with the ideas or guideline plans for these areas. Then government have a scheme that is known as Abdamitra Scheme. Abdamitra, I think everybody know Abda means in Hindi. Abda means in हिंदी डिजास्टर को हम आपदा कहते हैं एंड मित्रा मीन्स फ्रेंड है ना. तो दिस इज द स्कीम फॉर train the community volunteer in disaster response, which is that person is known as Abda Mitra. Okay, so this scheme is also developed by the NDMA, where they have role um, to give the training or train 6,000 community volunteer in disaster response, because whenever a disaster strike or hits, obviously first responder is the community. So that's why with these thing, uh, NDMA come up with the scheme that we should train the community person, the person who are more vulnerable, or if they faced any situation, so that they can deal with uh, this type of situation or with um, in hazard situation. So this is all about the Abdamitra scheme, or anyone can be a part of this scheme. Even the students, if they are interested to volunteer in disaster response, so they can also be a part of these voluntary services. Then MHA have a scheme for strengthening of SDMS and DDMS. So under these scheme, their aim is to improve the effectiveness of all SDMAs and selected district disaster management authority. I hope all participants are known about what are SDMAs and DDMAs and how they act. है ना? तो centrally there is NDMA, NIDM, NDRF. Then state have their own disaster management agencies, which is known as state disaster management authorities. Like in West Bengal, there is a West Bengal State Disaster Management Authority. In Meghalaya also, in Sikkim, there is a Sikkim State Disaster Management Authority. Under these SDMS, then they have the District Disaster Management Authority to deal with disaster situations in their area. So here government provide fund to strengthen the SDMS and DDMS by providing the dedicated disaster management professionals for taking up measures for the prevention, mitigation, preparedness, and capacity building to deal with the threatening disaster situation or a disaster. So here they have identified means under the 36 state with UTs, they have selected 256 DDMAs which will be strengthened and made more effective to handle the disaster situation. Under this scheme they will do. Then another, we have National Emergency Communication Plan Phase 2. Phase 1 is already completed. What happened during mostly in tsunami, even during the 1999 cyclone in Odisha super cyclone, mostly the communications were breakdown during this disaster, and we are not able to contact with the right person. So with the aim, with this view, the government had envisaged equipping the National Disaster Response Force with necessary satellite-based telecommunication equipment, including the VSATs, transponders, satellites, phone, etc., were providing the voice data video communication between the National Emergency Operations Center and NDRF battalion, or with the SDRF, those are responding. So the main focus of these plan is to develop uh, or strengthening the communication between the response forces and with the emergency operation center, so that at the right time we can send the right information to the respective agencies. Then about NIDM, as we are the agency for the capacity development. So in NIDM we have a specialized center on coastal disaster risk reduction and resilience, where our role is to share our knowledge and strengthening the capacity development in the coastal areas. So before the COVID, meanwhile, we in the midway of the pandemic, we go for the face-to-face training program and the conference, where the people, mostly the irradiated people, they share their knowledge with the uh, you can say the group A officers, because mostly we go for the group A, and up to, like, we not going for the student level. So mostly, or the SDMAs, DDMAs, their officials were part of this training program, because it's a national level training program. So we visited many flood affected areas, the cyclone affected areas, and we try to give at least, because we it's our thing that mostly the participant will learn how to deal with, means at least they know do's and don'ts if they faced or they were caught in any disaster situation. So this is our main motto. Then we have the UN agencies in India. Those are doing a very good job, and they providing fund to promote the strengthening the SDGs goal and SFDRR goal. So UNESCO provide a fund to strengthening or build the infrastructure that were lost during the tsunami in 2004. So they have developed 13 or in the slide you can see they have give 11 characters by which any community become a tsunami ready community. So these indicators are like first, like I have mentioned, they have give the criteria like have community tsunami risk reduction plan. During our training program, hope you heard about that. We go for the disaster management plan for every sector, for every institute, for every offices. Okay, because we need a disaster management plan for our institute or offices or for our geographical area. So for the tsunami ready program, they have first criteria is that area or the community, they should have their tsunami risk reduction plan, then have designated a map tsunami hazard inundation zone. Like in hazard assessment, I have told you that we need to prepare the hazard map for your area. So basically for the tsunami hazard. So for tsunami, we go for the inundation zone. Which zones are flooded or inundated due to the cyclone time or if tsunami hits those areas. So these are the main thing that they have mentioned. Then have a public display of tsunami information, like in every they give a criteria that for the community कि mostly they should in every road area the display, like in the road or whatever in the places in the market area, they at least people go for the information like in the pamphlet or we go for the holders. So have that place display of tsunami information, what you will do if tsunami strikes, do's and don'ts. Then the fourth criteria is produce easily understood tsunami evacuation map as determined to be appropriate by the local authorities in collaboration with the communities. So what they want to tell ki what we need, basically we should go for in our country first we have so many languages. So that's why they have mentioned ki first we should go for the easily understandable map. Okay, mostly these colonies like the community, they are not more aware with these English language or the scientific templates. So that's why they have mentioned if we are preparing a map or for the tsunami evacuation, so it is easily readable by the community. They have their map in their local language and the color combinations like they have give some knowledge, means imparting knowledge ki, like the red color shows the danger, and mostly we know about like even in our traffic light the red is danger, stop. Okay, so that's why in the map they you can easily means the community easily understood what are the evacuation areas how we can move from one point to another point. Then develop and distribute outreach and public education materials in that affected the tsunami affected areas. They mention ki, at least they should the government should distribute the materials that is related to the tsunami hazard. Ki what is tsunami hazards, how its impact, what are the uh, means do's and don'ts, ki how we can react during tsunami. So these are something that we should go for the pamphlet or the study material and distribute it in our community. Then the sixth criteria is hold at least 3 outreach or educational activities annually in this community. uh, in tsunami affected area, they have mentioned कि those areas at least they go for at least one activity, or you can go we can say in our language, in mostly in India we go for the mock drill, for the training programs. So at least these outreach do in once in a year. Then conduct an annual tsunami community exercise also, like the tsunami ready program, mock drill exercises in that tsunami affected areas. They should have their emergency operation plan. So these are the criterias like UNESCO developed for the tsunami ready program for our country. And I hope everybody you know that in our country, Odisha is the first state that, and their 2 villages is declared by the UNESCO as a tsunami ready program. So it's a privilege for us that Odisha are doing very good job for and they have means their work is recognized globally. Now, this is OSDMA website. I would recommend that other the coastal states or the coastal community, they should go for the collaboration with OSDMA, how they are doing work for their tsunami ready program or for the cyclone, how they are dealing. Because I think everybody know ki Amphan hits the Bay of Bengal, and mostly Odisha and West Bengal areas is affected by the Amphan, but uh, more casualties occurred in West Bengal. So we should prepare ourselves uh, how to deal with these situations in like a cyclone or with the flooding in natural hazard situation. Then again, a one good example from Tamil Nadu states. This is a project that is developed by the World Bank. They have funded for disaster risk reduction project for the Tamil Nadu and Puducherry coastal. Because I hope all you know that during the tsunami 2004, the worst affected areas are Tamil Nadu and Puducherry coastal areas. So they have funded, the World Bank have funded for the uh, resilient infrastructure, for the capacity building, for the sustainable fisheries and vulnerability reduction of these coastal communities. So these are the main 5 components of this project to make these states and UTs disaster resilient. Then it's a good example from the Tamil Nadu state, which I would like to present in front of you, so that you can spread this message to your government or to the right person. This is they have the Tamil Nadu state develop a smart GIS based app which is known as TN Smart. The full form is Tamil Nadu System for Multi Hazard Potential Impact Assessment, Alert, Emergency Response Planning and Tracking. So this is the app which is developed by their state. So you can easily download this app in your website. It's just like a Arogya Setu app. I now we have for the pandemic, for the COVID-19, we have the Arogya Setu app centrally. So it's a state app developed by the Tamil Nadu. So this app is dealing with the multi hazard, like in their name they have mentioned the multi hazard. So because they know that Tamil Nadu state have facing urban flooding, drought areas, drought, they are facing drought problems, heat wave problems are there, and so some part of Tamil Nadu they are facing landslide problem also. So basically, in this, they have identified the different type of hazard in their states, and how basically for this they have this static and the dynamic data. So from where they can easily predict from this is the map from these state also face the cyclone problem. So in these app, the main thing is to forecast a real information to among their community. And they in this app they also they have an option, means people they can also suggest a disaster risk reduction option to the government. They can reach if they can log into the portal. So if because first disaster strike in their community, so government don't know, the community will alert or give information to the authority, like to district to state, like this way the information will go through, pass on. Okay, so they have give the options like where the people can give the message like we are facing this problem, or we are hit by this cyclone, or flood problem, urban flooding. Okay, so they give these option to their society. Then how in this app you can easily evaluate their DRR strategies and measures, and they have also address the SDGs goal. So this is the mobile based application. So the data like related to the heavy rainfall, the sea condition, flood, tsunami, cyclone, so all these alerts in this TN smart apps. So it's a very good app, so that mostly uh, because right now I think everybody have the smartphone. So government should develop this kind of things, so that uh, good and right information is passed on to the community with the right way. Then in TN Smart, this app also addresses the 17 goals of SDGs, like no poverty, they addresses, uh, then no hunger, good health, quality of educations, gender equality. So this app also addresses the SDGs and SFTRR four priorities in this app. So it's a very good initiative by the Tamil Nadu state. So I would recommend कि you should also spread these information to your like in district, in state, so that they can go for this kind of app for your state. And centrally we have so many app, like for we have for lightning we have a Damni app, for earthquake also NCS they have developed. So you can easily we can go for like IMD, they have rainfall data for we where we can easily get the rainfall data from the IMD website. And in Cyclone, IMD is doing very good job in our country. So basically before we have so many life losses and infrastructure loss damages during the cyclone, but with the good you can say the advancement of science and technology, now we are able to give a good amount of good prediction, so that we can give a alert, or you can say early warning communication, that we speak in our disaster management. So within time, we spread the information to the community, so that they can easily evacuate from the vulnerable area, and they can go for the safe area. That I think we have the cyclone shelter areas. So even these shelter areas is converted for the, during this pandemic, they have converted for the COVID hospitals for the persons. So these are something like government is doing. They are addressing the SDGs goal and SFDRR in centrally and state also. Then what are the challenges we are facing right now? Like we should come up with innovative ideas how to invest in DRR strategies. We should come with good technologies, like we should increase the role of knowledge, like this training program is also a part of the preparedness, which is also a phase of a disaster management cycle. So we should impart knowledge at community level, at local level, with their languages, so that they can easily understood. Then we need innovation in technology, standards, and governance. Uh, like in Cyclone, we are doing very good. And in tsunami, we have our own center that I think you all know, that INCOIS. You heard about the INCOIS. So INCOIS is the nodal agency which deals with the tsunami hazard, and they are doing very good job. They go for tsunami preparedness pamphlet they have developed. They have a good research. Even they have now they are doing a research for ocean landslides. Mostly they are saying that research is showing that the 2004 tsunamis is occurred due to the landslide in ocean. So these are something that we are coming up, and we need effective early warning system. I think you have a lecture on early warning system. And basically, early warning means we need alert of for evacuate the community from any disaster. Okay, but in case of landslide hazard, we are facing a problem to develop a early warning system, because for the slope, those are moving. We install the sensor, and we can easily calculate their acceleration or the movement. Okay, but from sudden slide, we are not able, or for the rockfall, we are not able to give a good early warning system. So here we need an effective scientific research to for effective early warning system. Then we need capacity building and awareness generation through a community with their local language. In Disaster Management Act, we have provision to prepare the plans, policies, guidelines in the local language, because we have so many local languages. Then we recommend plan, DM plan for the heritage building. Why here I have mentioned the heritage building? Because we have so many good architectural buildings from the British culture. We have these buildings, so we should conserve these heritage building. And what I have observed through my field work, I have observed that these building, they don't have their DM plan. They are not focusing, or government is focusing for disaster management. So here I would recommend a inclusive DRR for heritage building. And I have visited Gujarat flooded area. So there is very good Morbi is their district municipal area you can see, which falls under Banaskantha. So at Morbi area, what I have there is good you can say a temple or which is developed by that time king. So that building they have marked the flood level, high flood level. So and there is no entry, means we can use these building for the tourism purpose also. So we should conserve these heritages building also, and we should come up a DM plan. Even in West Bengal, that area, I think they have a good heritage building. So I would recommend that for those buildings, we should conserve those buildings through our DM plan. So these are my recommendations from my presentations. So thank you very much. If you have any question, you can please ask me. Back to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your opinions and finding about this particular risk management, disaster risk management, and resilience. And of course, I think there is some questions might be our participant wanted to ask. And if somebody wanted to ask some question, please you can ask right now. Dr. Harjeet ma'am is along with us, so please ask the question, or you can write in the chat box also for your questions.
I think there is no question in the chat box, what I have seen.
Yes, there is no.
Yeah.
Right now, there is nothing.
Okay, but if later they ask, you can email me, so I will try to answer it.
Yes, ma'am. That's very good for us also, ma'am. If you want to share your email ID,
Yeah.
ma'am, then we will
Yes.
definitely share along with our participant the email ID.
Okay. So a participant can note my email ID. My email ID is Harjeet HARJEET 0909 @gmail.com. So if you have, yeah,
HAR, ma'am. HARJIT.
double ET.
Okay.
Yeah.
Harjeet, and then, ma'am,
Zero
dot
nine.
09. Fine.
Yeah.
09
Yeah.
@
Gmail.com.
Okay. So I'm writing in the chat box, ma'am.
Yeah, sure, sure.
I think it's fine. I think which I have
No,
shared.
no. It's incorrect. I'll just write it. No
Yes,
issue.
ma'am. Please,
Yeah.
you're right.
So this is my email ID that I have posted in the chat box. If you have any question, not question, if you have any concern related to my presentation or you want anything beyond this presentation, so you can easily text me or you can mail me. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Back to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we are proceeding into our next presentation, a special lecture by Srimati Aparna Bera from Suresh Gyan Bihar University, Jaipur, on coastal hazards and climate refugee, a case study of Ganga Sagar Island, West Bengal. About Mrs. Aparna Bera, I would like to tell all of you that she's MSc in Geography and MA in Education. She's currently working as research fellow in Suresh Gyan Bihar University, Rajasthan. She has been a former expert member at School Education Department, Government of West Bengal, and Open School Education Council of Government of West Bengal. She has also been a former faculty in Geography, MK College, Kolkata. Her research field are urban environment, climate, and natural disaster. So I would request Srimati Aparna Bera ma'am to please, you can share your lecture along with us, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Antara. Uh, a very good afternoon to all the delegates, experts, expert members, and participants. Um, today I'm first I would try to share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, this is visible right now.
So, first of all, I am thankful to NIDM and SAIARD for this opportunity. And today I am going to present on the topic climate-induced migration, risk assessment and management through a case study of Sagar Island. Screen is not moved.
Hello, is there any problem? Screen is visible. Hello. Aparna ma'am, screen is visible.
Actually, my screen is not moving, it's hanging.
তাহলে আরেকবার এ করুন।
Yeah, so
হ্যাঁ, এবার ঠিক আছে। এটা সেকেন্ড স্লাইডে আছে, ফার্স্ট স্লাইডে চলে যান।
actually I'm not seeing my screen.
না, এখানে আমরা
Okay,
স্ক্রিন
fine.
দেখতে পাচ্ছি, প্রেজেন্টেশন স্ক্রিনটা চলে এসেছে। আমরা কি এখান থেকে শেয়ার করে দেবো?
Yeah, I'm trying for the last time. So yeah. It's hanging again and again.
ল্যাপটপে স্ক্রলটা ইউজ করতে পারেন। কি অসুবিধা হচ্ছে বলুন?
My which screen is visible for now? Is the title screen or the second
No,
slide?
no, এটা সেকেন্ড পেজটা, সেকেন্ড পেজ।
We can see your presentation, ma'am.
Presentation, we can see your presentation, but the second page of presentation. Climate-induced migrants.
Yeah, so
Oh, is it? I think it. Now you are in that screen.
yeah. So I'll start. The effects of climate change, as we know, are causing large-scale human displacement all over the world. And with a rise in both rapid and slow onset climate phenomena, people have been more and more forced to leave their habitat and migrate elsewhere. And first of all, we should know who are the climate refugee. According to the definition of IPCC, the climate refugee or the climate-induced migrants are a subset of environmental migrants who were forced to flee due to sudden or gradual alteration in the natural environment related to at least one of the three impacts of climate change, that is, sea level rise, extreme weather events, drought, and water scarcity. And here, these obvious headlines that has been coming relentlessly over few years in the major national newsletters. This is reminding me a famous line from Amitav Ghosh, that is, in the era of global warming, nothing, no place is really far away. And we are observing the news shifting the capital of Jakarta, Indonesia. So whether it is Indonesia, whether it is Bangkok, Tokyo, Shanghai, or say for the example, our neighboring country, Bangladesh, and we are very in this part of Sundarban, where no way away from it. And according to an estimate of International Displacement Monitoring Center, there is a statistic that over 19.3 million people were displaced worldwide till 2014, and that could be reached to 1 billion by 2050. And India actually topped in 2019 in highest disaster replacement. And as we know that the fifth assessment report of IPCC has warned us that the low-lying coastal areas, especially deltas, will face high risk from rising sea levels due to three aspects. One is their greater exposure and higher sensitivity, and obviously they have lower adaptive capacity towards climate change. So with increasing temperature, changing rainfall pattern, rising sea levels, and coastal erosion and extreme storm surges, the low-lying fragile islands of Sundarban are also paying the human cost of climate change, as the people are becoming the region's first climate refugee. And we know as the other deltas are also sinking, and we could say for that matter, River Hooghly of this Bengal Delta has become almost an estuary of vanishing islands, as four neighboring islands have been submerged in past few decades, and largest island, that is my study area, the Sagar, is also slowly shrinking and sinking, causing loss of land, property, livelihoods, and displacing large number of people to search for the work in different nearer urban pockets of the mainland. So this will be the outline of my presentation. Actually, in recent years, the pace of erosion has made the refugee crisis of this region reach a tipping point, which actually demand for more effective governance and planning. As a part of prominent microtidal and flood-dominated estuary, coastal zones of this island are made of mudflats, creeks, and maximum elevation of 4 meter, and we know where the tidal range is 3.5 to 5.5 meter. So a large portion of the island becomes saline in daily basis through tides and occasionally through storm surges. And here I have incorporated few of the causal factor for this climate-induced migration. And we can say that in historical background, that land reclamation started in 1811, long before the accretion and erosion process could reach to a stable equilibrium in this newly formed active delta. And we could say that construction of Farakka barrage and eventually dying out of lower order tributaries had reduced sediment supply that had changed the hydrodynamics to surplus erosion. So, in a nutshell, the combined effect of subsidence induced, rather, it will be better if we could say that it is subsidence induced sea level rise and sediment deficit, and with that, clearance of mangroves and unsustainable infrastructure development, uh, obviously, on there were notions of ecotourism, but that has not been come out in that perceived manner. So these all the factors are responsible. So here the obvious questions come out is how this climate-induced displacement and resettlements are impacting the demographic, socioeconomic aspects of this affected area. And then does proactive migration, that is, if government or NGO provides some initiatives to uh, make them shift from their original habitat and make shift their livelihood to find in different place. So that will help better resilience, or and how climate resilient livelihood strategies can lead to achieve sustainable adaptation capacities at community level, and how different statistical and economic models of vulnerability, sustainability, and adaptation analysis will help authority in effective management and policy making. And obviously, how multi-hazard prone zone and coastal erosion mapping can help in identify risk area and provide an effective management policies. So we will have all the answer of these questions in further slides. Now let's investigate the situation, causal factors one by one, starting from the climatic variation. Here is the analysis of past 120 years data, and time series analysis is showing that the average temperature and precipitation has increased by 0.026 degrees centigrade and 3.72 millimeter. And it is interesting to observe that the most of the increasing tendency took place between 2001 to 17. And if we could see the rainfall distribution, there is obvious huge annual fluctuation, especially post-monsoon period. And if we come to the this occurrence of intensity of climatic storms, so here we could say that in past 10 years, past one decade, there is a huge increase in case of storm, whether we could say the gusting wind speed, or in case of storm surges, the frequency and intensity both has increased. And we know that for so many reasons, almost 7% of the major cyclones of the world are happening in the Bay of Bengal for the funnel for its funnel shaped and shallow continental shelf, and obviously global warming induced warmer ocean temperature. And this is the sea level, the rising rate of sea level here. We have enlightened from the eminent Professor Dr. Sugata Hajra and Kollan Udro in the previous days that this area Here is the sea level of Diamond Harbour from 1950 to 2015, and these areas is having that amount of rising sea level that is actually more than 3 times higher the national average. So higher storm surges, greater tidal ingression, and actually all intensified coastal erosion that led to severe land loss. Here, this is from 1999. We have used Landsat ETM, Landsat OLI, and visual image representation technique for shoreline mapping. And during 2009 and 19, the shoreline and the corresponding area of Sagar Island has reduced significantly from 246.76 square kilometer to 230.98 square kilometer, and the average decadal percent change for this period was minus 11.33%, 33%, pardon. And in LULC mapping, this is done by using Landsat 45TM, and maximum likelihood method was used for the land use classification. From 1990 to 2020, considerable changes was that there is a significant increase in build-up area, coastal water, and decrease in agricultural land, mangroves, reflect an evident impact on the livelihood vulnerability and adaptive capacity of the population. So moving on to the next slide. Here I have done a livelihood vulnerability analysis, as globally research concerning the human dimension of environmental change applies this vulnerability assessment method to identify the vulnerable areas of population. And this is a comparative assessment of livelihood vulnerability of climate-induced migrants and the regular settlers of two Mojas, that is Ganga Sagar and Biguakhali of Sagar Island. I have used the method by Han et al. In 2009. And the main objective was to investigate the impact of climate vulnerability on migration and assess the socioeconomic impact. From May to July 2019, extensive primary field survey and secondary official data were collected to identify the immigrated areas, and random and purposive sampling techniques were applied to collect household data of both the regular and refugee settlers. And if we could compare the result, there was the major component of exposure. Exposure was measured by the perception of natural disaster and the climatic variation by the community, and sensitivity was measured by the assessment of health, food, water, and social safety. And thirdly, the adaptive capacity was quantified by socio-demographic profile, livelihood strategies, and social safety. And this LVI IPCC analysis shows that the resettled refugee population of Ganga Sagar are highly vulnerable, followed by the same of Biguakhali, whereas the regular population of these measures reflect moderate vulnerability. Moving on to the next slide. Vanishing land means displacement, loss of livelihoods. So refugee from here in this map, migration map, we are seeing that refugees from Lohachara and lost bits of Goramara and some other neighboring islands like Moshuni is currently adding up to almost 25,000 in number, and this has been started from 1980s. And local BDO block administration is resettling them under different government schemes on Rayati land, that is the almost vested land. So on the basis of field survey and official data, these are some of the specific mojas that are vulnerable to migration due to unstable embankments. Greater exposure to climate hazard and higher deficiency of a rural population and their dependency on rain-fed agrarian economy made the population more vulnerable. So before migration, they had 4 to 5 acres of agricultural land, and on an average, but now most of them have been turned into seasonal laborers due to lack of their organized livelihood options. And in this map, we are seeing the mojas marked as light red. These are the mojas that is having uh, the broken embankment, and some of their are obviously there is a effort of making them concretized, but these are green portion, these green modules are actually the receiver of this migrated population. So we are actually seeing a vision of the people moving to the interior portion of this island from the coastlines, and the red marked modules are actually the areas which having both the erosion and people are moving from the coastline to the interior portion of these mojas. Okay. This is another analysis attempted to understand empirical linkages between uh, the economic determinants through GLM coding. 4 separate models were used to inquire the location-specific significance of the association between 4 criteria, that is land loss, productivity change, loss of livelihood, and migration. And for that matter, almost 1023 households from 41 mojas were surveyed using systematic sampling that is covering almost over 2% of the total population with less than 5% of random error, as the dataset consists of both the discrete and binary entries. Logistic regression has been done to analyze the interlying relationship. And from this, we have known that nearly 51% of the household reported a loss of productivity and 39% confirmed their loss of original livelihood. Here in the regression plotting of 41 inhabited mojas, this is showing the existing association between the loss of livelihood and change in agricultural productivity. And the mojas like Dhoplad, Shibpur, Begwakhali are showing outlier characteristics due to severe erosion and embankment failure. The overall observed association between key variables is reflecting that heavy migration actually is not sustainable for a longer period of time due to aggressive sea that is eroding much faster rate than once perceived. So severe riverbank erosion in the northern tip of this island and tidal erosion in the southern part as well. Villages like this are actually having forced to retreat from these advanced seas. So moving on to next slide. This is the factor analysis to assess the vulnerability and risk assessment, and this is the framework for the methodological framework for this. So here, the operational determinants of exposure, sensitivity, adaptive capacity, they were used to extract the PCA through the Kaiser nomination, and then after normalization, we got the specific indexes of vulnerability and risk. Here, we are actually seeing the plotting of specific, what we can say, the specific participation of exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity in the PC 1, 2, 3, and 4. And here is in this R plotting of PC 1 and 2, we are like the previous slide, we are observing the outliers who are performing the negatively best and positively best in this regard. So moving to the next slide. This is the computation base of vulnerability and risk assessment. And this is showing the Moja-wise hotspot of a relative ranking of 41 Mojas. So this multi-dimensional figure indicate the majority of the vulnerable community is surviving in the marginal areas along the coastline. And if we could state the example of Shibpur, Dhoblat, Begwakhali, Mushmari, and Bankim-Nagar, Sumati-Nagar, these are the Mojas that is at high risk and high vulnerability, while Kochuberia, Muriganga, Chondipur are at low risk of exposure. So this kind of location-specific schematic diagram can be very effective for target adaptation and mitigation in these geographically homogeneous villages. Typical observation can readily be correlated with specific portion of the satellite imagery. And here is the map of vulnerability and risk that is also showing those Mojas. These areas need immediate mitigation intervention from the local government and planning authority. I have used a different technique that is actually generally used in the mainstream economics. That is the Gini coefficient and Lorentz curve. So I was interested to measure the inequalities in development criteria of these 41 Mojas. So as we know that as the curve moves differ from the central axis, the maximum is the inequality. And here Gini coefficient is showing that in case of health, transportation, not the transportation, in case of health, embankment, cyclone shelter, and mangrove cover, these Mojas are actually, there is a lack of inter-region inequality in respect of development. And here, if we could summarize all of the overall assessment of development, here we are having the whole assessment of the island, and here in the red colored portion, these are the deficient in terms of development, and the greens are the obviously surplus portion of surplus Mojas, and the yellow two Mojas, this is the Rudranagar and Radhakrishnapur Mojas. These two Mojas are actually meeting the development need of the, as these two Mojas are showing zero residuals. So we are having almost 11 mojas that is heavily deficient. Moving to the mitigation portion. If we think of the management perspective, uh, we are having all the situation togetherly. There, all the situation are actually interplaying with each other. So we could approach this management from three-dimensional approach. That is from one is mitigation, risk, and vulnerability. That is the disaster management, and then strengthen the adaptive capacity, that is through socioeconomic development, and thirdly reduce exposure and sensitivity. And by the IPCC definition, we are already know that the in this case we can regard three of the procedure. First, retreat, let the mangrove wall stabilize the coastline, then protect with the concrete embankment, protect the uh, inhabitation, protect the settlement, and then revive through a long-term planning proposals of reviving the inland channels and lower order tributaries if possible. So with the keeping the sustainable goals in mind and Sendai network, Sendai framework, that is sustainably increase the DRR of the region and sustainably decrease the disaster mortality and economic loss and loss of livelihood, everything keeping concern. Here is my conceptual model of sustainable resource management. This model could obviously bridge the gap between the necessity of the migrants and priorities of the policy measure at micro level by providing the livelihood provisioning through sustainable resource development that can assess the livelihood security of the threatened communities and assure their responsive capacity development through participatory management. So uh, the findings and analysis I have discussed from my two recent publications so far. However, if all these adaptive measures have their limits and once reached, impacted communities may actually ultimately have to retreat, evacuate, and resettle elsewhere. And this mighty island is also awaiting these inevitable uh, consequences unless compensated by the immediate policy interventions. So at the conclusion, I would say that these marginalized population are actually paying our climate cost. At the same time, protecting us standing standing on the frontier of absorbing the first impacts. So can't we be benevolent enough to return them the same? With this, I am concluding my presentation and I am now open for questions.
Thank you, ma'am, for gracing us by your findings, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So if anybody having some question can ask. If somebody want to ask some question.
If anyone interested for later, if anybody come up with any queries or any kind of cooperation from me in further, so they can also contact me through mail or direct message.
Yes, ma'am. It will be good that we will share the email ID, or if you want your email ID,
Yeah,
so that you can mail their questions there.
yeah, of course. So it is abrc1985 @gmail.com.
Ma'am, can you write it in the chat box, ma'am?
Yeah, of
Because
course.
yeah.
So I'm writing this. You can move on to the next session, to the
Yes,
next
yes,
speaker.
yes, ma'am. So in our today's session, our next speaker is uh, Mr. Shahid Bulzar. So Shahid sir, are you ready? Yes. For the Shahid sir, I would like to add that he is the faculty in our GIS division, International Institute of Geospatial Science and Technology, Kolkata. And his topic is delineation of coastal hazard prone areas through geospatial techniques. Let me tell to all of you that Mr. Shahid Gulzar is uh, having 5 years of industrial experience in the GIS field, and his subject of interest is the water resources, climate change, and disaster management. So I would request Mr. Shahid sir that to proceed. Sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Munmun ma'am. Thank you, Arpana ma'am. And uh, good afternoon to all participants, panelists, and expertise. So, with that, I'm going to start my presentation. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are
Am I-
audible.
yeah, okay, thank you. Because I'm facing some technical glitch here, so that is why. So,
Yeah, you are audible.
so okay. So, as ma'am has quoted, that my topic is about mitigation of coastal hazard prone areas through geospatial technique. As frequent coastal disasters in response to climate variability and change has significantly impacted the local communities in coastal districts. And as per data, nearly 171 million population living in coastal districts of India are at great risk due to sea level rise. So, coastal hazards, these are the natural, as we know that in a layman's definition, coastal hazards are the physical phenomena that expose a coastal area to the risk of property damage, loss of life, and environmental degradation. So, while looking that in recent years, we are
Shahid
experiencing.
sir, sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry, yes, sir.
Okay, okay, your slide is not moving that time. Okay, now it's showing.
Sir, sorry, sir. Actually, I am facing some signal problem. Signal glitches here, so that is why maybe my voice and my screen is not visible to you. I'm trying my best to overcome that. Sorry for that.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
So, as we are just seeing, we are facing in 21st century. Uh, we have seen Odisha super cyclone, and we have seen Bangladesh flooding. So, across um, six Indian cities or six Indian parts, namely Chennai, Kochi, Kolkata, Mumbai, Surat and Visakhapatnam. 28.6 million people would be exposed to floods in near future. So we have seen that there are many coastal hazards, that land subsidence is there, flooding is there, coastal flooding is there, storm surge is there, coastal erosion is there. We are also seeing some saltwater intrusion is there, and apart of that, as I mentioned earlier, that there is sea level rises too there, and with that, in recent years, we have faced some storms too. So while just going through all those hazards, coastal hazards, we are trying to overcome that. We are trying to have some policies. We are trying to have some latest scientific innovative methods to rectify those issues and mitigate them. So, what are the importance of coastal areas? As we all know that these coastal areas are biologically active areas. They have rich biodiversity, and they are good for recreation in terms of tourism. And the biological and natural resources are there are abundance of biological and natural resources, so they are sources of protein too, and meanwhile they are the sources of livelihood too, and backbone of local economy. So in other terms, they are the sources of transportation and navigation. So settlement and housing is also there, and with that, there are some we are facing some issues too in the coastal areas, and those issues are, as we know that in present areas, due to modernization, there is extensive development of coastal and marine economy. So with that, marine pollution is there. So conversion of natural habitat to human use, that is also the issue in present era. So increase of coastal development, so impact of climate change and critical depletion of coastal resources. So for that, we have seen many techniques are being used to restore the coastal areas. As before me, Apna ma'am and Ajit ma'am has also enlightened on that. So how geospatial technology could play an important role in measurement of accurate lengths, in restoration of coastlines, shorelines, how we are going to classify them, how we are going to monitor the erosion in the coastal areas, then how we are going to map those areas which are facing such type of situations. So there are multiple environmental hazards stress in those areas, as the growing population is one of the environmental hazard, tourism, and poor coastal water quality, then depletion of fisheries, that is also multiple environmental stress there, and apart of that, overgrowth of alga, then siltation from upland erosion. So how the geospatial technique has been used to delineate the coastal hazard prone areas through this technique, we will see. So moving further, if my this slide is visible to everyone, I'm moving further. So for
Yes.
that, we have chosen the Tamil Nadu Kodulur district. So this is the steady map of Kodulur district, and this is the location map where Google location map of Kodulur district. Why we have chosen the Kodulur district? Because it is the most vulnerable district of Tamil Nadu state, and experiences many natural hazards, including cyclonic events and recurrent cyclonic events, in significant loss of life as well as property. And mostly this Kodalur district is an agrarian district. So apart of that, we have seen in past, normally during northeast monsoons, cyclonic storms are formed in the Bay of Bengal. In past 60 cyclonic surges have been crossed to that very area. And in past 4 decades, only 5 occasions, mean to say 1978, 1991, 1993, 2000, and 2011, there is considerable damage has been created, has been reported to that very Kodlu district because of cyclonic storms. So with that,
Hello. Hello, Shahid sir. Am I audible to all of you here?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible. Shahid sir is not audible.
Okay, okay. Thank you for the information. So I think some technical glitch is there in from his side. So let me check it out. Okay, just wait. So there is a technical glitch from Shahid sir's side. So we are like trying to fixing it up. So just cooperate along with us, please.
Sorry, am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir. Audible, sir. Sir, you are audible. You can continue, sir, if you want. Hello, Surya Prakash, sir.
Yes, hello, madam. Tell me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we have along with us Professor Surya Prakash, sir. So, sir, I would like to request you to address us in for today's session, session, sir, concluding session, sir.
Thank you for inviting me. We had these 3 days online training program focusing on coastal disaster risk reduction and resilience. As we discussed during the inaugural program, this is an important theme, particularly when we are talking these days on climate change and the recently concluded Glasgow COP26 meetings. They highlighted the needs for climate change adaptation and action plans, particularly for the coastal states and the island nations and the states. So these are important because the extreme variabilities which are happening in terms of precipitation, in terms of the temperature changes, extreme weather events, whether be it cyclones, lightning, flash floods, or other such events. In the higher reaches in the mountainous areas, we are also experiencing the rapid rise and rate of melting of the glaciers, as well as the occurrences of avalanches and landslides in the hilly terrains. So both the ways, the water discharges in the rivers are increasing, the sea level is rising, and this rise in the sea level is also causing loss of coastal lands in terms of the erosion, as well as coastal landslides and submarine landslides. These are also leading to other kind of potential disasters, which may even the submarine and coastal landslides can lead to tsunami in the oceanic environment. So being close to the coastal areas in the Indian Ocean, the states, the coastal states are very much prone to different type of hazards that we need to actually discuss and enhance the capacity of the human resources for risk reduction and resilience. I'm very happy that the SAIARD collaborated with us in actually establishing and discussing the potential use of spatial technology, particularly in terms of remote sensing, GIS, and currently even we are doing mapping using drones, and also the applications of the current techniques and tools in terms of say artificial intelligence, machine learning languages, and also the robotics being used for disaster risk reduction and resilience. These are not only important in terms of our understanding for the disaster risks, as the priority one under Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, but also in terms of our quick assessment of the damages and losses caused by these events. So the geospatial technologies provide us support in many ways, in right from the understanding of the variations in the attributes of different parameters affecting the occurrence of any hazardous event, evaluation of the vulnerabilities of the different elements exposed to those hazards, the degree of exposure, as well as the potential risks in terms of hazards, vulnerabilities, exposure, and their values, and then followed by the priority actions to be taken in at different levels of the risks that have been defined in terms of tolerable, intolerable, acceptable risks, and also monitoring them regularly using the geospatial technologies over a period of time also helped us in early warning and communications. So there are a number of ways in which these geospatial technologies have been useful, and in the event of any disaster, they provide us an immediate, broader geographical reconnaissance for the preliminary immediate assessments of the damages and losses, followed by our actions for rehabilitation, restoration, and recovery plans, which also can be done using the inputs from the mapping done using the geospatial technologies. So number of such potential scope of applications of the geospatial technologies nowadays. We are not just using the RGB images, but also in terms of the radar images, which have been utilized well. Not only we are able to see the areas in the daylights, but also even if it is dark, those radar images are very much helpful. We have also got now new techniques like LIDAR, both ground and air-based LIDAR mapping has also been done. So I hope the delegates and participants must have learnt a lot with the applications of the geospatial technologies, the case studies shared by our distinguished experts, and also they will try to implement the key points that have been learned through them during this 3 days online training program. So I wish that they will be able to assess their risk in their own localities, take adequate actions for the reduction, and enhance resilience through awareness, information, and preparedness at different levels amongst all the stakeholders. In disaster management, we talk about all-inclusive approach. No one should be left behind, and we should not only just take care of our human beings at the central point of our DRR process, but also the whole ecosystem in an integrated, holistic manner, so that the survival with nature is more harmonious, safe, and sustainable than otherwise. So with societies and community level maps can also be prepared using these geospatial technologies, and they can also validate those maps. So I would urge that we should involve the communities which are affected by these disasters in such localities and share this information with them so that everybody gets benefited. And I'm very sure that the knowledge, information, ideas, experiences, and innovations shared by our experts would surely enrich our delegates and the participants and provide them the pathway towards disaster risk reduction and resilience. These efforts have to be sustained. These are not to be discontinued and also disaggregated way. They have to be actually integrated and sustained in a way that we can achieve our destination of the national policy on disaster management in terms of zero casualty, disaster free and resilient nation. We can also map all the infrastructure and structures using the geospatial technology and find out their degree of vulnerability, as I said in my previous part of this lecture, and then try to go for retrofitting, re-strengthening and renovations in those structures and infrastructures. We have the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, the initiative which was taken by United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction Office. And we are part of it and working towards resilient infrastructure systems. And as you see that during the COVID-19, a lot of efforts were made to strengthen that health infrastructure, which was weak and not adequate enough to meet the challenges of these kind of global pandemics like the COVID-19, and similarly for other such hazards. And our approach is multi-hazard. As you can see that during even COVID-19, we had faced several other disasters, including the number of cyclones like Amphan, Yas, Taute, and others, and the number of floods and landslides which have happened. So we have to work together as a team. As we say, together each achieve more. Team means together each achieve more, and sustain our efforts and stop not till the goal is achieved, as said by Vivekanand ji. So therefore, I would end up stating that कि मंजिलें उन्हीं को मिलती हैं जो सफर अख्तियार करते हैं, ऐसे मुसाफिरों का तो यारो रास्ते भी इंतजार करते हैं. So we have started our journey towards risk reduction and resilience, and let's move ourselves from the risks towards the safety and from damage and loss to the resilient infrastructures. So these are our goals under the Sendai framework also, and targets under the Sendai framework. 7 targets have been fixed up, and we are trying to follow that Sendai declaration along with the 4 priority actions and 7 targets. We are working together in collaborations, establishing our early warning system, developing our local and national strategies, and reducing the losses of the human lives, the number of affected people, damage and loss in terms of economy, as well as the damages to our critical infrastructure, particularly the health and the educational facilities and services. So these are some of the issues. Further, the last point I would like to add is that digital expansion has happened during this period because of more interventions, online education, trainings, webinars, and so many activities, and even some of the institutions' functions, operations. And this has also given us an exposure to a new kind of hazard which may also affect it, that is in terms of cyber disasters. And we are also working on this in terms of securities, vulnerabilities, audits, and the risk reduction measures as prescribed by our Indian Center for Cybercrime Coordination, as well as our other or such organizations which are working in these directions. So let's continue these efforts, and I wish everyone a safe, healthy, and good quality life on an equitable, justifiable, and right-based manner with good fraternity, and wish you all the best. Thank you very much for providing me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking out a valuable time for all of us and address with your valuable talk, sir, and the wishes you have given to us and blessed us the wishes. So we are very, very thankful to you, sir. Now, at the concluding session, I would like to invite Dr. Vishwajit Rai Chaudhary, sir, to address us.
Thank you, Munmun ma'am. And first of all, once again, I was mesmerized during the lecture of Surya Prakash sir, particularly. So definitely the challenge which we are mainly focused regarding this disaster management sector, and all the initiatives which we can take to sustain our lifestyle and sustain our maintain our lifestyle. And because disaster is not only coming from the natural sectors but also anthropogenic sectors is more vital. So we have to be very protective, not only because from ourselves also, as that whatever the requirements, whatever the fallacies, and whatever the suggestions the our resource persons has provided regarding the GIS, application through GIS technology based application analytics anyway. So we have to take proper precautions. Along with that, we have to create some awareness. No, this capacity building program is not only to learn the application based techniques or to mitigate the disasters, but also it's not the only one objective, but also another objective is that we, through this capacity building program, we would like to create some awareness about the possible disasters related, either it may be the landslide case or earthquake or coastal hazards, etc. So hope these 3 days capacity building program, as I told in my previous first day lecture, that it's our 7th program which we are going to organize in association with NIDM. And I'm really thankful to the authority of NIDM for supporting us in this regard. And always in future, we are also going to offer some another important topics, some another important capacity building models in front of you. And as that, it will help you in future to be resilient in future disaster management sector. So with this, once again, I thanks to all the participants, the resource persons, today's resource persons, and the previous 2 days resource persons also, and obviously Dr. and Professor Surya Prakash sir for his supporting hands also. So with this, once again, I congratulate to all of you. Hope very soon we will meet in another platform in another event. Thank you, Munmun ma'am, and thank you, my team also, for support for your heartfelt cooperation to make this event successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And along with this, I would like to add want this opportunity to thanks to Dr. Harjeet Kaur ma'am and Srimati Aparna Bera ma'am for gracing their crucial work and sharing with us their opinion, their findings. That is going to be very helpful for all of us. And as no program can be successful without with a single person only, so I would like to extend my big thanks to all the listeners, all the participants over here for their active presence, patience, and encouragement. And along with this, I would like to thank to all my along with all my colleagues, Dr. Arindam sir, Antara ma'am, and Shahid sir. Thank you, all of you.